Yeah, hi, my name is Rachel Yang. I'm chef owner of restaurant Jewel and Rebel here in Seattle.
My name is Wes Yoo. I own a restaurant called Wiro in Ballard in Seattle. It's a Korean restaurant, and I make food here.
I think actually if that question was asked maybe 10, 20 years ago, I think people had to sort of choose one. But I think in year 2023, I don't necessarily think that you have to choose one or the other. Because I feel like I'm equally Korean as much as American. I do have American citizenship. I am married to an American, have kids who are mixed race. However, like more than 20 some years of my career is about cooking Korean food. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when you think about like what you do sort of makes you who you are, and sort of being able to cook Korean food in this community, it made me more Korean than ever, let's say, if I were to be still in Korea.
Whether you're first generation or second generation, when you grow up in a multicultural background, it's probably something everybody goes through, and I definitely went through that a little bit. I think sort of in my late 20s, I started to realize that it's really up to me to decide if I feel like I have no home or if I have two homes, and I'm luckier because of that. So it was more of a shift in mindset that came with growing up, and actually just through this business and just sort of going through my creative process and all the inspiration I get from my culture definitely allow me to reconnect with my heritage and my my background. Yeah, and I feel that I'm as Korean as I am American, and vice versa now, and I think I'm lucky for that.
Absolutely. I think food is one of the best way to really kind of like talk to people, see people, and understand people. Food is basically, like a simpler way of saying is that, food, like what you is what you are, right? I think food really kind of tells people what kind of people you are, especially with Korean food, it's all about sharing. And I think that aspects of having a like, whether it's a banchans and then like, doing a Korean barbecue, it's such a communal and sharing experience that you're having. And that just kind of shows you what kind of what kind of culture the Korean people have. So definitely food kind of lends itself to that. And like we talked about earlier, like, they like hot stuff really, really hot. They like cold stuff really frozen. They love spicy and very interesting flavors. And like, but at the same time, Korean people are all about a healthy food and, talk about how kimchi is the most probiotic and healthy food in the world. And so it tells you like very interesting aspects of what Korean people are like through their food. There's actually a huge difference, yeah. Interestingly, there are lots of second generation Korean chefs who are, way they approach food is very different from how I approach it, because they're just very interested in traditional recipes, from Korea, and traditional method of making, let's say 간장, doenjang, and also from fermented food. Whereas for me, those were almost a given, a very basic and standard recipes, and I wanted to kind of bring in different aspects of it, hence that, my restaurant is more of fusion. So it's kind of like very different starting point that we had, and it's always very interesting to see different perspective and how they end up in two different places.
As far as how I got into food it's honestly, it just sort of happened. I was working sort of a corporate job. It's sort of a cliche story, and I wanted to work for myself. I felt like I wasn't going anywhere. I wanted to do something on my own. The culture piece of it came into play once I went through the pandemic. When I first got into the restaurant business, I didn't do Korean food. This space looked a little different, and it was just a cocktail bar and things like that. And once the pandemic hit and sort of going through, we talked a little bit about being conflicted, whether I am Korean or American. once once the pandemic hit and we were shut down and we were going through all these tough times with the business, that's when I realized, like, okay, like I've been here for 20 years, but I'm still very much Korean, and that happened because of food. Just, people talk about like memories attached to food, but I think food is more powerful than tangible memories. I think it has emotions attached to it that you can't really explain. I think it has to, it's not necessarily always about how it tastes. It's about how it makes you feel. When people talk about, their grandma's, their favorite is their grandma's version of, kimchi jjigae in Korean culture, or chicken noodle soup, whatever, right? Like all the comfort food. I think, and those bars are so high for, people to meet if someone else is making them food, because it's not just the recipe. It's not about how it tasted. How many stories have we heard about people going, oh, this is our family recipe. Our grandma, used to make this for us, and she gave us this recipe before she passed. But like when we make it, it's just not the same. It's like, well, there's probably some skills that grandma had, because she cooked for so long. But I think a lot of it is just how it made you feel. And that's the big realization I had.
Yes. I think, well, to be honest, I mean, like, here in America right now, in the beginning, I know there are a lot of people who sort of struggle to find their identity, and then later you realize being different and having a different story to tell is the biggest gift that you can have.
Yeah, young chefs, if they want to make food, and it doesn't matter if they're Korean, whatever culture they come from. If they're trying to make food of their culture, it's just important to know what they're about. It's okay to say I don't really care about tradition. I'm gonna redefine the culture. Okay, great, but then like keep doing that. Be about yourself and stand up for yourself.
When you open a restaurant that has food that shows who you are, and it becomes a passion and it becomes a more of a lifelong pursuit, and that's really the only way for you to really survive and succeed in this restaurant business. So especially more of an interesting story you can basically have that makes you unique and different, and it's all about basically a journey to kind of find a way to connect with the audience, your community, and your people, to tell your story, that how they can connect to you.
Knowing what your lane is and staying in it, and not letting anyone take you off course, I think would be the biggest thing.